Okay, that's thing that struck me is that both of you talk also, you're really interested to know really, to do research and to know about the impact. And what makes it that both of you you're both practicing, and at the same time you are doing the research. Could you maybe say something about that?
Susan, do you want to go
Yeah,
first? Or you want to-
it's a real difficult question. Uh, why the hell did I spend 40 years of my life doing research? I sometimes, because, um, yeah, I think it's, um, for me, there's a real motivation to do better. Um, I'm I'm very sad when I think how many people have mental health problems and how often how little effects our treatments have. So I think for me, mindfulness was just like all the other things that I studied. I always said, you know, if I don't know the English word, but if wichelroede lopen is better than cognitive behavior therapy, I'm going to do wichelroede lopen. So I don't. For me, it's not a. It doesn't matter what you do. It matters that it works, and that it works for um, yeah, for the benefit of as many as possible persons. So I think that's where the research really helps us.
I don't know whether you know the word wiggelroede, but I looked in my Google Translate. It's wedge rot.
I don't know if it translates well into English.
Well, afterwards you can communicate together about it.
So I was a practitioner way before I was a researcher. I started practicing mindfulness when I was a teenager myself, in the mid 70s, long time ago. And I saw how, and I was a teacher. So I not obviously not when I was a teenager, but I became a teacher, a classroom teacher. I saw how much teens were struggling. And so at some point, really around, mid 2000s, I was a, mindfulness practitioner all of this time. And I saw how much it was helping me. And so in the mid 2000s, I just decided to go back to school to get my degree and bring together these different threads of my life, my mindfulness practice, which was my anchor. That was my anchor through all of my adult life. And my passion for helping to alleviate suffering for young people, which is something I'm absolutely passionate about. And I remember I was teaching in a middle school, and a student said to me, wait a minute, you're leaving us and going back to school to learn how to work with teens? So, but that was bringing, the whole idea of that was bringing together these different threads of my life, and that I was passionate about both of these things. And at that time, self-compassion was just, Kristen Neff was just coming out with her first studies on self-compassion. So I started reading about it, and there you go. That's how it happened.
Yeah. And I think I'd like to add one thing, Wietke, on your question. I think for me, when I started with mindfulness, people weren't really taking me seriously. So I think the research was also kind of a tool because if it would work, then people would start to take it seriously. So the research kind of, and when we found it work, that was very helpful for mindfulness and now self-compassion to be taken seriously.
Yes, I can imagine. I think the way how the corporate sector started to offering to their personnel mindfulness training, it has to do, I think, that it was proven that it's really. But I think it's very, very good to do it too, especially when you say, Karen, that you feel the suffering of young people, that you really want to do things that we know that's evidence that it will help.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because quite often it seems as something very soft. So it's good to have to show really the impact. That's why I also liked so much the words, Karin, which you use, that it's about fierce and tender. Because quite often we say it's only about tenderness, but you use both words. Could you elaborate a bit why?
Yeah, so those aren't my words. I have to credit Kristen Neff.
Yes.
So Kristen Neff came really articulated that well, and I believe it came out of the Me Too movement, and that we need to protect ourselves, and self-compassion is giving yourself what you need. And self-compassion is, and part of what you need is standing up for yourself. You know, if you're being mistreated by someone, or you're in a situation, a work situation or a relationship that is unhealthy, it's self-compassionate to say, no, I'm not gonna take this. I'm not gonna engage in this relationship, this unhealthy relationship. It's interesting. I have always considered that fierce or that strong part of self-compassion as the same, as integrally connected to the soft part. You know, for me, it was all the same. And I think, well, for various reasons having to do with, you know, my upbringing, but, you know, to me, it's very clear that being kind to yourself means, when necessary, standing up for yourself.
Yeah.
And drawing boundaries.
And how is this for you, Susan?
Yeah, I was thinking when you talked about the fierce part of self-compassion, I'm thinking about, I've met so many parents in my working life who are fighting for their children in such fierce ways. And I always felt that's such a beautiful energy, so important, and really not always respected or valued. And because I think that's the most important thing we can do, fight for our loved ones. So indeed, in that fight, and we see it now in Iran, how the women are fighting for their freedom and how the men are supporting them. So yes, that movement is born out of self-compassion. Yeah, but of course it's what of course is the complex thing that sometimes we have to fight. But are we still compassionate? I often question myself also with mindfulness, you know, anger and mindfulness, it's the same topic. Sometimes it's very helpful to be very angry with someone, but then I'm asking myself, am I still mindful? You know, am I mindfully angry, or am I compassionately fighting? Yeah. I don't know the answer.
But it's so nice if you can find a balance between those two, between the fighting, but at the same time to have the self-compassion part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. I think, yeah, I always ask myself, what is my intention? What's behind it? You know, and I think for me, that helps me a lot in discerning, is this healthy anger or is this not healthy anger? You know, what's my intention? What's behind, what's driving this? What's behind it? And yeah, that really helps clarify things for me.
And thinking about the female issue, we're sitting here with 3 females. Of course, there is a huge intergenerational anger among women about what they haven't been able to do with their lives, how how they didn't have the freedom to do the things they wanted to do. So there is I think, a deep anger that may need, and that may also explain perhaps this rise in depression we're seeing in women at the moment, because depression, of course, is a way of repressed anger. You know, that's one of the theories of depression. I don't think it's fully wrong. So indeed, we, in the mindfulness and in the self-compassion trainings, we have to give anger a place, the place it deserves, because it's a very healthy and important energy. If I now see people gluing themselves on the streets in Berlin and everywhere in the world because they're so angry that politicians don't listen and that we're ruining the world, I applaud for them. I think it's amazing what they're doing. Yeah. And that's indeed a healthy expression of anger, because they're not doing terroristic things. They're just expressing their anger.
Yes, and standing up.
Standing up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's what I see, that it's really standing up for their own rights and their women rights.
Yeah.
But when it's also when it comes to that balance,
yeah,
then and also the strength of the community, I think.
Yes.
It's also what you appeal to, Karen, at our final exercise, that you really try to include the whole world, and you end it with including yourself.
Yes.
Right, because we often forget about ourselves, right? You know, we often, once we start being, even in our self-compassion programs, you know, we have practices like this that are also about compassion for others. But yet it's so easy to forget about ourselves when we start giving compassion, generating compassion for others. So I like to include that little piece at the end, you know, just don't forget you are as deserving as all these other people. And often people tend to think that, you know, there's this limited amount of compassion that you can give, you know, and if you give it to yourself, there isn't enough for other people who might be, in your mind, more needy, you know, more in need of compassion. But what we know is that the more compassion you give, the more, it's not limited, you know, the more there is. And because when your own resource, when you give compassion to yourself, you're filling your own resources, you're filling your own jug so that you can have more to give to others. So, you know, we teach self-compassion to caregivers a lot in the medical field. And I have a class tomorrow morning, actually, you know, I'm teaching some medical residents. And because these are people who spend their lives giving to others and not so much giving to themselves. But we know that when we take care of ourselves, that we are more able to take care of others with mindfulness and both mindfulness and self-compassion.
Yes, because they strongly relate to each other, eh?
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
I'm thinking, Karen, of this term compassion fatigue, which I really love.
Yes.
And you see that in professional caregivers of all sorts, but also in parents who have sometimes huge tasks if they have to take care of children with special needs. And indeed, they can get in a compassion fatigue and in a burnout as a result. So it's very important indeed that parents take care of themselves and caregivers take care of themselves in order to do this amazing tasks that they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Karen and Susan, I think we could continue for a long time. At the beginning, we said this world is so full of so many chaos, etc. conflicts, wars, etc. But that we really hope, we said to each other, that mindfulness, self-compassion, it seems to be a small thing, but I think at the end we can really contribute to great changes. And we need to believe on it and practice every day our own journey of mindfulness and self-compassion. So thanks very much to be together this evening. I already saw on the other screen. Thank you. I hope we will do more of these kind of webinars in the future. So thank you very much, both Karen and Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wieteke. Thank you all. Thank you, Akare, for organizing this.